Welcome, everyone, to Family Talk. It's a ministry of the James Dobson Family Institute, supported by listeners just like you. I'm Dr. James Dobson, and I'm thrilled that you've joined us.
Well, welcome to Family Talk, the broadcast division of the Dr. James Dobson Family Institute. I'm Roger Marsh. Today, we're revisiting a classic broadcast featuring Dr. Dobson in conversation with Roger and Darlene Anderson. This remarkable couple has weathered extraordinary challenges within their family, demonstrating incredible faith and resilience along the way. Now, the Andersons' journey began when they discovered their third child was deaf, a diagnosis that would forever change the family's trajectory. Rather than being defined by limitations, they chose to embrace God's sovereignty in their circumstances instead. And as you listen to their testimony, you'll witness how faith can sustain us through life's most difficult trials. Their story reminds us that even when we don't understand God's plan, we can certainly trust His purpose. Well, now let's join Dr. James Dobson as he introduces the Andersons and their inspiring story on today's edition of Family Talk.
Roger, you're a businessman? Or
Right.
You own a business, is that right?
Yeah, small business.
And Darlene, you're a full-time mom, a former school teacher, I
Yes.
understand. How many years did you teach school?
I taught 7 years and then retired to
raise children.
to raise my family, yes.
My wife Shirley did exactly the same thing, 7 years of teaching and then a full-time mom. Do you think you'll ever go back?
Because I homeschool my oldest two, I really am still actively teaching, so I enjoy that much more.
How did you get into homeschooling?
I think that,
We didn't like the alternative.
but I think just from the beginning when my son was just a toddler, just thinking of what we could do with him at home, and having been a teacher, I guess I just felt like I would like to share that experience with him.
Has it been what you expected it to be? It's a lot of work, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
I'll bet she's a fantastic teacher is what I bet.
When she, in between other kids and problems and things like that, yes.
And the last thing, or the next thing that our listeners need to know about you, Darlene, is that you're going to have baby number 7. Well, we want to walk through your personal story in this program and let people know where you've been. And the portion of it that we're particularly interested in here started with the birth of your third child,
Yes.
Darren. Okay, pick it up there and tell us what you learned.
Well, Darren came along seemingly fine, like our other two, normal delivery and everything. But just probably a few months after he was born, we noticed that there was something just slightly different with him. I guess an easy way to say it is he was like a rag doll, just very floppy, and didn't develop quite like the other two had developed. And he was progressing, but very slowly. And we talked about it back and forth and didn't want to take him in right away, thinking maybe we're being a little paranoid. And
I'm the type of person that if it isn't broke, don't fix it. So I don't go running to the doctor for everything. And so I just thought, well, he was just like a little loose goose, The other kids, I could sit him on my hand and carry him around just straight in front of my chest, and it wouldn't be a problem at all. But him, he'd just go, whoop, fall right over. Like I said, I just thought it was just a difference in the child, but it turned out to be something more than that.
And we know now that is a warning sign. We were starting to say things, I think, not even consciously realizing, making observations that we, just kind of storing them away. Like Roger would say, he doesn't know my voice. He doesn't turn to me when I call him. And
He doesn't listen to me.
yeah, or I remember telling someone, this is not an auditory learner. I think he's visual or something, And finally, it bothered me so much that he consented, and we took him in. And they did an evaluation of him, but basically came back with, well, he's a little on the slow side developmentally, but he's still within range. So,
What age was he then?
he was probably just about 8 months by then. But one little test they had done there bothered me. And when I went home, I decided I was going to try the same test and see if I could get any different results. And that was they had taken a little bell and tried to ring it next to his ear, and he turned but I think he saw the bell. And so I sat him in his high chair and gave him something to occupy himself with and stood behind and rang a little bell. And when I noticed he didn't respond, I called Roger and showed him, and he said, well, you have to have something to really get his attention. So he got out a couple big pan lids.
Husbands do things in a big way.
And crashed them together right behind him. And when we saw that he was still playing with what we gave him, it was like we knew right then. This answered all the questions. Everything that we had thought and said came together right then. We didn't even have to really discuss it. In fact, right away, I got out the phone book. I looked up an audiologist and called and made an appointment to have him seen. Well, of course, this was near the end of the week, and I couldn't take him in until the first of the next week. And so that was probably one of those long weekends of my life.
We've all been there over one thing or another.
And I think, I questioned and answered all my
your own questions
fears and everything that weekend. And I don't think we ever said, God, why? We always felt like this is the way God has made him. But at the same time, I still grieved because I started thinking, he'll never hear music or the birds,
your voice.
Or my voice say, I love you. And I went to church that Sunday and took him, and I didn't want to tell anyone because I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just some silly idea we had. And so I went through the motions, and everyone, put him in the nursery with all the other children who were playing, and it was a very difficult time for me then to realize I know there's something wrong, and I can't really share with anyone.
And the next week you had it confirmed medically.
Yes. The audiologist put him in a booth and did all kinds of sounds, of course, and we have no family history of deafness, so this was something totally new to us. And we really knew nothing about it. And the audiologist was, now we believe, a poor choice, but we had no knowledge of audiologist either. He was scribbling on paper, and basically when he got finished, he said, I've confirmed this is right. Your son is deaf. You'll probably want to do some more tests later on. That was basically all he told me. And I noticed he had been writing on a paper, and I said, well, can I at least have a copy of what you're working on? And what it was an audiogram, which is a paper, it's like a graph. You have decibels, which are loudness on going vertically, and frequencies going across. And I took that home and tried to figure out what this paper said, and at the bottom he wrote no response at 90 decibels, which is fairly loud. And
did he write the word profoundly?
No, there was a key on it. Well, what I did was I went home and called the library, and I said, can you give me some, look up decibels and tell me what different sounds make, how many decibels. And of course we've learned a lot since then, but maybe 10 decibels, that's like leaves rustling. And then you get down to 120 decibels, which is a jet airplane taking off. So you have everything in between. And so 90 is pretty bad, when there's no response
if he
at all.
didn't hear that, he's not hearing.
So we contacted him again. He said, your son is so deaf, he'll never learn to talk. Hearing aids will never help him, so I suggest you decide to start communicating with him through sign language.
And we were fortunate. God worked in that he brought other people in, and she's going to get to that. But whenever something like this happens, just don't take the first opinion that you get. You have to be an advocate for your kid. You have to go out there and do the research yourself. Because on this, we thought our only recourse was to go with doing sign language, and I thought, man, I'm never going to learn sign language. When it comes to that sort of thing, I'm pretty slow.
First, Roger, tell me how this diagnosis hit you.
I've been a Christian ever since I was 4 years old. And in the back of my mind, I've always tried to reference things in a Christian perspective. At the time, it all comes down to your frame of reference. What are the principles? What are the things that determine how you handle things? And it really came down to the fact that God is sovereign, and whatever is His plan, I have to go with that.
That's a theological position and an understanding, but pain was still there, and it's in your eyes and your voice right now.
Yes, it is. It's not nearly so much with me as it is my wife. she responds to that so much more than I do. I guess it's because of the way I'm sewn together inside. But I remember when we first realized that it happened, and we were at church on a Sunday morning, and we sort of waited around for the pastor to kind of get done with the bulk of the people and everything so we could kind of let them know what had happened. And Darlene was there, and of course, she wasn't doing well emotionally. But I just felt a lump in my throat about the thing, and we told him that he was deaf. And in some ways, there's so little deafness out there, a lot of people don't even comprehend.
No understanding.
That. They have zero understanding about it. And they know it's a serious thing, but they don't really understand all the ramifications of it. It's like right now, it's very difficult to tell our son about how to be saved because there's so many concepts of, heaven, of eternal life, of sin. You're talking to a 7-year-old, but you got almost like you're communicating to a baby. In order to explain sin, we have to call it bad things. Where with my other son that was 4 years old, or almost 5 when he was saved, it was very understandable. But we have to twist everything and frame it so that...
You really had to learn to be the parents of a deaf child, didn't you?
Yeah, well,
you don't automatically know how to do that.
You have to learn to think for them sometimes.
You have to think in a way that they can understand that you don't communicate with other people that way because their frame of language is so limited. It's just very narrow. So you have to focus everything down into a real tight channel.
You obviously then began exploring this problem medically, and you found that the cause of the deafness was... what?
Well, it was determined that he has a form of what's called Mandini dysplasia, and just to simplify it, it's where the cochlea, the little snail-shaped part of the ear that has all the little hair fibers in it, stops growing at a certain point, and the normal cochlea has 2.5 turns, and his only had 1.5 turn.
And this is a genetic.
It's a genetic, and at the time, in fact, we were told it was viral. That I probably had contracted something during my pregnancy and caused it. So even that, we had so much misinformation and things at first. But I had started very aggressively learning sign language. In fact, I had it arranged that we would have a private tutor come to our home even and teach us. And I was getting this all set up, and Roger said, I know this may be the way we have to go, but I just don't feel this is right. He has to grow up in a speaking world, a hearing world, and we want him to be able to be independent. Our philosophy.
So he can go to McDonald's and order a hamburger, and not try and make gestures that somebody can't communicate.
Controversial point of view, isn't it?
Very,
that people have very strong feelings about whether you teach sign language or English,
right,
or some other language.
Auditory verbals.
Program we call. So anyway, I decided maybe I needed to do some more research. So I started writing and contacting people, and actually, someone suggested I get a second opinion. We had him taken in, and this audiologist did work more with an oral program. And when she got done and showed me the audiogram, which by then I had learned a lot more about audiograms, it was totally different from the first one. She had him charted that he had some low-frequency hearing. And I said, now how do I know yours is right and this other one was wrong? And she said, I believe this is accurate. I really have faith that he tested well today and that this is where he is. And she suggested we get him into hearing aids right away, which we did. And by 15 months old, he was able to say moo and bow wow. And we became very aggressive, and I educated myself as much as I can. I read and worked extensively with him, and he made very rapid progress then.
Well, what's really tough is how do you test an 8-month-old? I mean, they can't respond. Oh, I heard that. They can't do that. And so all the audiologists can do is look for eye movements when they hear a sound on their right or their left. And so it's extremely difficult because they can really give you nothing other than a response and maybe a facial gesture, a turn of the head, or a glint in the eye, and that's all they can really use to test where they're at.
So you can't do it with precision, but you do get
it takes a very trained
diagnosis.
person.
You do know there's a hearing problem in most cases, don't you?
Yeah.
Now, you all then were faced with a very important question about additional children.
Well, not at that point, because we still had gone on the premise that it was viral. And plus, this had just happened.
No family history.
No family history. And in fact, when I was expecting my fourth child, late in the pregnancy, Roger was outside and he wanted to scare me. And he lit off a firecracker. And he didn't realize that at that very moment, the baby had been stirring. And so I was kind of patting my tummy and talking to the baby. And then when he made this loud noise, I realized the baby didn't startle, which I had remembered my older two startling late in the womb, later in the pregnancy. Yeah. And I became concerned about that. So when I went to see my doctor a couple days later, I told him about that. And he said, "What a silly thing for you to think about." He said, "Don't you realize that was some crazy fluke with that pregnancy?" And he said, "I want you to get that out of your mind and don't even think about that again."
He was trying to be kind to you.
I think so, but...
Well, there's an attitude out there. I don't want to say necessarily an attitude, but deafness is so rare. Pediatricians they don't test for it. There's nothing that they do that way, and it's just so uncommon that they write it off.
Anyway, that's when I began to do more research on genetics, and I began learning some of the things that we know now, that everyone carries 6 to 10 bad genes, and if you happen to mate with someone who is also carrying one of those bad genes, that the chances of the right combination is 1 in 4. Yeah. So basically we would have a 25%, every child we'd have would have a 25% chance of having that happen.
It's Mendelian recessive, which means that you both carry the gene for this deafness.
Right. And so when our little girl was born and we were at the hospital, I begged and pleaded for the doctors to test her. I just still had that uneasiness. And they wouldn't do it. They said, "Well, you have to be scheduled ahead of time, and it's too loud in the nursery, and this and that." And I was quite frustrated, but maybe I wasn't as much of an advocate and as bold as I am now. And so I let it go, and when we got home, I told him to get out the pots and pans again, and as she was going to sleep, just that first night, she was only 2 days old, he banged the pots and pans, and she didn't respond.
And this is your daughter named?
Britney. Once you leave the hospital, then you have to go through all kinds of things to have tests done and things like that. So she was actually 6 weeks old before we were able to get an auditory brainstem response test done, which is pretty objective to let them know if there's hearing or not.
Bear test, they call it.
And then when we went to the audiologist, she had tested Britney at 3 weeks because I asked her and she wasn't really sure. But then she realized that Britney was far worse than Darren. And also at the same time, Darren had stopped doing well. He had plateaued and he wouldn't learn anymore and we couldn't understand. Britney got her hearing aids at 9 weeks. My audiologist tested Darren again then and found he had lost all of that low-frequency hearing he had. So now we had 2 children in a very profound state of hearing. And so then, progress went much slower then.
Yeah. Now we come to that question of additional children.
We knew at that point that, if we had any more children, that this definitely could happen again. We had 2 and 2. Yeah. And I think we were really very optimistic during our 5th pregnancy because we felt...
Chances were 75%.
Right. Yeah, that's what I said. We have 75% chance of, this child hearing.
Roger, did your friends support the idea of additional children?
We've had very few friends support the idea of additional children. God has for you, I think, a core of people, not the bulk of Christians in your church, but there's a few core people that God brings you to help you through these things. I wish it was better. I wish that, the whole church rallied around you. But there are a few people that God brings in to help you through these things.
And there were a few that got you through it.
There was a few. And they would come at Darlene with, why doesn't Roger have an operation? Or, how come you're having more kids when they could be handicapped? Things like this that really... you're struggling enough as it is. You don't need that. You need encouragement. You need to be exhorted.
What is particularly painful about that is that there's an implication behind a statement like that a child with a disability should not be born,
right.
That he or she is less of a human being, and that comes through in a moment like that.
There's something bigger out there, and this is one of the things that I have a problem with about the attitude of the people in our country is that they've lost the idea that there is something bigger than ourselves out there, that God has things in mind that he really would like us to keep our hands off of. And it's a terrible thing to hear about, babies being aborted when they're most of the way out of the womb and everything like this. It's just, it stabs in your heart when you know that Darren with his defect and Britney with hers, they're just as valuable as any normal kid out there. God says in Genesis, I forget who he was talking to, he says, who has made man's ear? God takes full credit for my child's defect. He doesn't apologize for it one bit.
And he can use it for good.
He certainly has.
Yeah.
So you decided to go ahead and have another child.
Yes. It was, I think, a little more difficult for me because I knew that if it happened again, how much work it is a lot of work, raising them and working with them. And so I probably struggled with that, just making the decision to go ahead. But when I look back now, and I guess I would say that had we made this decision to stop because of what might happen, we would have robbed ourselves so many joys.
You would know those other kids.
And they're a lot of work, but they're precious children.
The third child was also born deaf.
Well, actually, the fifth child.
The third deaf child.
Yes.
Our fifth child.
Yeah. And a fourth one.
Yes.
And the sixth, yes.
Our sixth child.
Yes. So you have 4 hard of hearing children. Are all of them profoundly deaf?
Yes, they are.
Before we go any further, talk about where God is in this for you. Obviously, you prayed about those other 3 children after the first child was born deaf. What did he say to you? And what are your conclusions about where he is?
I don't think God doesn't make sense. I think God makes perfect sense. But this world is so distorted by sin, and it's under a curse. The ground is cursed that we get our food from. And it really appears that God doesn't, because we look at it and I think we want to say, what did I do to deserve this? Or, I think we look at it from that perspective. But
you understand that is the implication of the title, when God doesn't make sense to us.
Sure. And
he
I
makes
understand
perfect sense.
Absolutely.
He always makes perfect sense.
But
it just doesn't make sense to us.
This world is not what it's supposed to be. This world was created to be something far different than what it is today. And we suffer in the light of that. We have defects. We have imperfections. We die. It's something that isn't supposed to be this way. But because we're in this world, we have to deal with it. And I think emotionally, we come up with those feelings about why doesn't God make sense.
Well, we've barely scratched the surface on the Andersons' remarkable journey, so I hope you'll make plans to join us again next time when we continue this conversation here on Dr. James Dobson's Family Talk. I'm Roger Marsh, and we've just heard part 1 of Dr. Dobson's conversation with Roger and Darlene Anderson. Now, if today's broadcast resonated with you, why not share it with someone who might also need this message of hope as well? You can easily access today's program and share it with others by visiting drjamesdobson.org/Family Talk. And this year marks a special milestone here at the James Dobson Family Institute. It's the 15th anniversary of the Dr. James Dobson Family Institute, and we would love to hear how Dr. Dobson has impacted your life and family. Your meaningful memory will be a gift as we celebrate God's faithfulness through this ministry. Now, you can go online to drjamesdobson.org and follow the prompts to leave a message. You can either write your message out on the website there, or you can record an audio or video greeting as well for Dr. Dobson and the team here at the JDFI. You can do all of that to celebrate our 15th anniversary when you go to drjamesdobson.org. Here at the Dr. James Dobson Family Institute, we're committed to preserving and promoting the institution of the family and the biblical principles upon which it's built. Every day, families face unprecedented challenges to their values and well-being, and through broadcasts like the one you heard today, we provide biblical guidance and practical wisdom to help families navigate the culture with confidence and faith. Your support makes it possible for stories like the Andersons to reach millions of listeners searching for hope and direction. You can make a secure donation online at drjamesdobson.org. You can also make a secure donation over the phone when you call 877-732-6825. That's 877-732-6825. Or if you prefer, you can write to us. Our ministry mailing address is Dr. James Dobson's Family Talk, P.O. Box 39,000, Colorado Springs, Colorado, the zip code 80949. Again, that's P.O. Box 39000, Colorado Springs, Colorado 80949. Well, I'm Roger Marsh, and on behalf of Dr. James Dobson and all of us here at Family Talk, thanks so much for listening today. Be sure to join us again next time right here for the conclusion of Dr. Dobson's fascinating conversation with Roger and Darlene Anderson. That's coming up on the next edition of Dr. James Dobson's Family Talk, the voice you trust for the family you love.
This has been a presentation of the Dr. James Dobson Family Institute.